Hey, what's up guys? Leonardo Ribeiro here, and in this video we're gonna talk about React hooks. So let's get started. So basically React hooks come up on the version 16.8 of React, and basically its purpose is to be an alternative to class components. Since with React hooks you can create and manage states inside of functional components. And not only that, you also can use React's lifecycle hooks inside of functional components as well. I'm gonna create a new project here, and I'm gonna use create React app. Okay, so our app is already created. Let's see how it looks like right now. So here you can see that our app is working fine. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is to remove all the CSS, JS tests, and SVG files. Then I'm gonna remove these files that I've just deleted from inside of app.js and index.js. And I've just put a hello world here, and it's working fine now. So right now the next thing that we're gonna do is to convert this class component here in a functional component. And I'll remove this component here since we will not have to use it anymore. Now I'm gonna save it, and it should work the same way that we did it before. Let me just make a small test here. There we go. Okay, so the first hook that we're gonna use here is called useState, which is the one that let us manage states inside of functional components. Okay, so right here we are just declaring two new variables here, a count and set count. And this way that we declare variables is basically destructuring the result from the useState method. And the useState method return an array with two values inside of it. The first value is the current state value, and the second one is the set state function, which you use to update this current state right here. The parameter that we are passing inside useState is the default value for our current state. And right here I'm passing 0. So right here I've just updated the current value to count, which for the first handler of the page should be 0, as we've passed it right here. And I've just put an onClick function here that should update our current state after a click on this div. So let's see how it looks like right now. I'm just gonna save it. And if I click over the hello 0, and right here inside of our div, we have this count value, which should be updated every time we click on this div value. And if we click here, it should be updated, adding +1 to our state. And right now the second hook that we're gonna look right now is useEffect. And what useEffect does is basically the same thing that component did mount and component did update. So for instance, let's say that we wanna update our current page title every time that we update our account right here. Now, if I save this file here, on the first render of our page, this useEffect will run as our component did mount would run on a class component, and we're gonna update our current title right here. So I'm gonna save it and let's see how it looks like. Now, if I click right here, our account will update to 1 or 2 or whatever, and our title right here will update as well, as our component did update would do on our class component. See? Very cool, right? So right now we have like component did mount and component did update in a single function. So let's say that we want to use something similar to component will amount to remove some action listener of our component. To do that, what we have to do is we just have to return a callback function that will be called every time the component amount. So I've just saved this file and the component here refreshed. And if I click here, we're gonna set a new value here. Our component will see that we have change to be done. And we're gonna unmount first the component and call this callback function that we just declared here. And after that, we're gonna run everything again and useEffect as our component did update. So we're gonna render again and call useEffect again and set our document title with our updated value right here. So this is basically how our lifecycle hooks works inside of a functional component with React hooks. Another interesting thing that we can do inside of our functional component with hooks right here is that different from class components, we can have more than one state. So for instance, we could have like const name set name equals react.useState, And right here I'm passing a default value for this different state, which is my name. So I'm gonna set this new state value right here, which is my name. And right here as well. And if I save this file, you're gonna see this hello Leonardo Ribeiro. You've clicked 0 times. And we're gonna see this on the document title as well. And what I could do here is to declare a new function that could like update my name when I click this div. So I've just declared a new function to handle click, and inside of it I'm setting 2 different states here. And one thing that I've really loved about hooks is that since we use functional components, we don't have that this dot handle on click dot bind and pass this on the parameter. And if I save this file, we will have our default values right here. And if I click over it, we're gonna see the update happening. So I just click it and it called handle on click and update the current state of my name and the state of count. And beyond that, you also can have multiple useEffect inside of a functional component. And we can do that for separation of concerns. Like right now, we are using pseudo component did mount and component did update to change our document title, but we could also do something like this. I'll pass here callback function, and this second useEffect here, we use it for only for when we unmount our component. So let's see how it looks like. Okay, just refresh it right here, and if I click it, it should run useEffect right here and this other useEffect right here. Now, before we move on, one tip that I want to let with you guys is don't use useEffect hook inside of conditionals, because this is a bad practice, and the way that React takes care of these 2 useEffects is by registering them somehow, that when the component updates, it's expected to preserve the same way that the useEffect was before. So if like you put a condition like this, if count bigger than 5, then render this one. Else render this one. So right here, the first one that we're gonna use is this one right here, that is responsible to run when we first render our page, and because count will be 0, so we're gonna get here, and this is just run when our component unmount or updates. So let's see how it looks like. And here we have 5 on count. So the next time that I click here, you see that you'll not see this component on mount happening again. So let's see. Yeah, this is not counting, only this one. So basically we've just changed the state of the useEffect calls on our React 3. And yeah, I mean, you can do that, but it's not a good practice, and you can check it out on the documentation to see details about it. And another thing that we can't do is having multiple use effects like this and change the amount of use effects inside of component, because as I said before, React register the amount of use effect calls inside our functional component, and if this amount changes, we will see an error, because after the amount changes, it will not match with what is registered by React. So let's take a look. So right now we're gonna just see this use effect running right here. And if I click one more time, now you should see an error. Like this one. So yeah, this is another thing that you should avoid when using renders. Beyond that, that's fine, declaring multiple use effects as and use states as well. And React did it because it makes it easier to separate concerns inside of our component. So this way it should work fine now. Yeah. Another thing that we could add right here is to avoid unnecessary call for useEffect by passing a second parameter here beyond our first callback, which takes our state data right here, like count, for instance. What will happen here is that when our component updates, this useEffect will verify if this count changed, and if it changed, then React will call this callback function. Otherwise, it will be skipped. So we can improve the performance of our component depending on what you are working on. So another cool thing that we can do with hooks is creating our own custom hooks. So remember when we used Redux, we had to create our reducers and then spat actions which would pass through it, and then it would update our state based on some action. Okay, so right now we're gonna create a use reducer function and use it to update our current state. So the first thing that I'm gonna do here is create my to-dos reducer, which should take a state and an action. Then we would switch this action type and case add, for instance. And then in case of adding a new to-do, we would return our state plus our to-do, our action.to-do, and our action.text, and by default it should be not completed, so completed false, and by default we would return our current state. And now we're gonna create our custom hook, which will be called function use reducer, and this one will have a reducer as a parameter and our initial state. Then we would declare our state and set state from react useState, and inside of this useState we would get our initial state right here. Then inside of this hook we would also create a new function called dispatch, which would take an action. So our next state, our reducer, passing our current state and our action, and then we would update our current state in our use reducer hook. So set state would be next state. And to finish, we would return an array with our current state and our dispatch function. So I'm gonna clean up what we have right here, and I'm gonna clean up what we have here as well, and start from scratch this new app component with hello world, just to make it clean. And yeah, so right here we're gonna have our const. We're gonna have our const to-dos and dispatch equals our use reducer. And since we've already declared our to-dos reducer right here, this is the one that we gonna use. So to-dos reducer. And as a second parameter, we're gonna have an empty array, since we don't have any to-dos yet. Actually, I'm gonna put a to-do here with a text and learn hooks and completed false. Then we can have a better idea about how it's looking. So I'm gonna create a new field here. Input type, and this value you have an idea of to do, and after that we're gonna have a button with add inside of it, and I'm gonna create a onClick function that will call handle click to-dos, and when it's called we're gonna handle click to-dos, and then we're gonna get our value from here. So const value equals document.query selector hashtag to do dot value, and then we're gonna dispatch this action of type add with text of value, and this value dot, and then our document, sorry, let me put this way, it's gonna be easier. And then our input dot value would be equals nothing, so then we can reset our input. And right here on the bottom we will have our list of to-dos. So our to-dos dot map to-do will return a list. Let me put a URL here, and this will return a list. With our to-do dot text. So I'm gonna save it, and let's see how it looks like. Oh yeah, we're gonna add our kid prop here with the index of our to-do. Okay, so I'm gonna add a new test here. So learn React, for instance, and let's see how it looks like. Yeah, it's working fine. Okay, so we just created our reducer first, which should take a state and action, and based on the action type, we would update our current state. Then we created our custom hook called useReducer, which would take a reducer function and an initial state as a parameter. Then we defined our state inside of this custom hook to handle all of our to-do list. And we created a dispatch function right here, which we are using to update our current state and call our to-dos reducer right here, or whatever reducer you create. Then we return an array that will be just destructured right here. So here we are calling our custom hook. We are passing our reducer that we just created right here. And we, on the second parameter, we are passing our initial state, which would be an array with one object element with text and completed keys here. And we are using these two variables here to get our actual to-dos. And whenever I add some text right here and click on the add button, we are calling this handle click to-dos, which are getting our input field, getting the value inside of this input field, and calling our dispatch function with the action of type I add, and with the text with the value of our input field right here. And after that, we are passing a new value to our input field with empty string, so we can reset any value that we have here. Okay, so that's it, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and For my next video on the next week, I'm gonna talk about the use of context APIs and React hooks together. And I'm gonna give you guys a few more tips on how to use React hooks in an advanced way. If you like it, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe. So yeah, that's it. Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye bye.